What is the legal penalty for counterfeiting? Now, counterfeiting, most people know, is the illegal printing of money. Illegal printing of money. And then attempting to spend that money into the economy, attempting to defraud others, which is theft. It's theft through fraud. It is theft through tricking people. Ethically, counterfeiting should be a crime because it involves stealing that harms other people and tricks them out of their resources. But we're going to look at it economically as well. Economically, which economics does not in and of itself deal with the question of ethics. It's more of an empirical study that deals with what is, not normative questions of ought and should. Economically, what happens when someone counterfeits? Well, what occurs when someone counterfeits is they have artificially increased the money supply without the requisite equivalent of an increase in goods and services in the economy. So they've increased the money, added money to the economy without adding any goods and services to the economy. They've tried to get something for nothing. They've tried to suspend the first principle and law of economics, which is scarcity. And in doing so, increasing the money supply. This is actually known as another common term called inflation. Inflation is an artificial increase of the money supply of an economy without the requisite equivalent of goods and services added to the economy. Meaning you've added artificial money without an addition of goods and services to be justified by the money that account for the value. And so it is, in a sense, fake money, and the economy has to adjust. And the counterfeiter, in doing so, is not only stolen from the immediate person that they are defrauding, and everybody who uses that dollar, but by creating it and spending it convincingly into the economy, if they don't get caught, the counterfeiter has depleted the value of everyone who holds the same money, even if it's by a little bit, and even if it's imperceptible to them. That the value of their money has been slightly reduced. In addition, and so inflation, by the way, is what is done to the money. People usually think inflation is high prices. High prices are a consequence, one consequence that don't always occur, but one consequence of inflation, higher prices. The other consequence is a reduction in the product or service while they're saying they're giving you the same amount. So rather than raise the price, they just reduce the amount of the product. Feel how much air is in a bag of chips, as an example. Now, what is the legal penalty for counterfeiting? Well, according to a quick Google search on this, counterfeiters can receive about 20 years in prison or up to a $250,000 fine. And more penalties layered on top of this, depending on the damage that their particular act of counterfeiting has caused. If by any chance any other person other than the defendant makes a financial loss or gain, the sentence becomes heavier upon the person caught, and the person caught can get 25 years in prison. This is a pretty hefty penalty for such an act, but it is a serious crime. That being said, economically, inflation has the same effect, whether it is done by an individual or multiple individuals, whether it is done by individuals, banks, or governments. However, banks with government sanction and the government itself monopolize printing and print money into the economy. Now, when an individual does it, it is a crime, and rightly so, called counterfeiting, that gets 20 years in prison. But when government-sanctioned banks and the government itself prints money, it's referred to as monetary policy. And it doesn't have to be literal printing, it can be digital printing as well. Now, the size and scope of the crime of the counterfeiter is limited, depending on how much they print money. However, when a government does it, and it's not illegal at that point, that does not change the economic fact of what happens. That inflation has occurred. There's an artificial increase of the money supply without the requisite increase of goods and services added to the economy. And so if the punishment is 20 years in prison for an individual who does this, or up to a $250,000 fine and more, depending on the consequences of the act of counterfeiting, what should that say about people who do it legally? The legal sanction of the monopoly of government, that do it en masse, that print more than an individual counterfeiter or a small group could ever dream of, and cause more widespread consequences of inflation on a national and even global level. And if people don't believe that there's effects of inflation or that it doesn't matter, well, just look at the CPI inflation calculator since 1913. $100 in 1913 would be worth, it would take rather, $22,631.05 today to be the equivalent. That doesn't mean there's been a gain of $2,500. That means that what $100 could buy in 1913, it would now require over $2,600 to buy today. That's an increase of inflation of 2,531%. Some people see, oh, well, the prices haven't risen. We've printed all this money in the last year. Prices haven't risen. Prices are not inflation. Inflation is what is done to the money. We see the liquidity of money, the volatility of money, of what money can do, and we see that the effects of inflation don't always catch up immediately. But they are evident. $100 in 2013, here's how inflation has gone up. Here's another one that may be easier to see, the buying power of $100 over time. Now, it's basically $3.72. That means by the act of inflation, printing money into the economy without the increase of goods and services to justify that printing, has depleted the dollars that we hold of some 96% of their value. Said another way, It's taken 96 cents out of every dollar that you spend and that you hold. And that if you hold it in savings, if you had $100 in savings in 1913, that $100 would now basically be worth $3.72. So inflation is a hidden tax against dollars held and savings. It's a major transfer of wealth from the middle class and the poor to political elites and financial elites who are politically well connected. And those governments and politically connected financial elites get to benefit from this easy money and credit printed by the government, taxed from the dollars held in the savings of the people without their real awareness, and use this to spend on whatever wars, programs, institutions that they deem fit, which the American people would not stand for if they had to be directly taxed to pay for those items. To show it another way, here's the cost of living, 1952. A new house cost less than $10,000, $9,075. The average income was $3,850 per year. A new car was $1,754. Now we understand houses and cars have changed in technology. So there is that aspect of things getting possibly more expensive. However, inflation factors into this as well. The average rent, $80,000. Harvard tuition, $600 a year, which meant that you could work a summer job and pay for your tuition at Harvard. And so sometimes people look at this and they say, well, just wages haven't kept pace with inflation. And that's true as far as it goes, but only 1.9% of workers are paid at or below the minimum wage, federal minimum wage. In addition, a silver dollar today, which is inflation proof, it holds its value no matter how much money is printed. A silver dollar today is worth the equivalent of about $15. So it's not just wages, it's that the value of the wage that everybody has been making has been depleted through inflation. Because if you were being paid in a silver dollar back in the day, that would have been the equivalent of $15 an hour today. Harvard tuition, $600 a year. Movie tickets, 70 cents. Remember when pennies used to be able to buy things? Neither do I. Some people do, older people do. Gasoline, 20 cents. Postage stamp, 3 cents. So we can see the effects of inflation. And arguably, that even though something is made legal, that does not mean that it's made ethical and just. The same economics apply. The question is whether the same ethics apply. That if it is a crime punishable by 20 years in prison or a $250,000 fine for an individual, what about the people in government who do the same thing just on a greater scale?